Welcome back to the Celtic Exchange Weekly. This is Tino, and this week I'm joined by Miff and James as we once again cover all things Celtic. Miff, Brendan Rodgers demanded a response from his players at the weekend. 24 minutes in and it's 4-0. What was the difference between this weekend and last week in Perth?
Hello Tino, hello James, hello listeners and viewers. What was the difference? I think just maybe a sharpening of the attitude, given there's been a bit of a post-mortem since St Johnstone, and I think there was really a bit of ire from the fans as well. So I think those things combined meant that the team bizarrely went out with a point to prove, even though, you know, the league table tells you everything you need to know about the story of the season. But defeats of any kind really aren't accepted at Celtic, but certainly not defeats to bottom of the table when you've got the chance to have a title party the next week at home. So I think that was very much on the players. The manager made that pretty clear as well, regardless of what your thoughts are on that. That is what he did through the week, and as a result the players then were duty bound to respond, and I think they did emphatically.
Yeah, they did that. And James, you'll have heard Brendan Rodgers pre-match on Friday, I think it was, and his big annoyance, his big gripe was the fact that the players had taken away the chance to win the title on Saturday. And Saturday was great. First half was brilliant. Great to see, and far more like the Celtic we know, and far more like the Celtic that certainly performed in the first half of this season. And what were the guys that were getting the grief? So Rio Hatate, absolutely, Cameron Carter-Vickers, Alistair Johnston, amongst others. They were getting it pretty tight, but they all responded pretty well, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, those players did, but I think everyone did to a man. I think they were given a message, and if they hadn't responded, it could be pretty tricky for them in the close season, and it might still be for some. I think Rodgers sees he needs a bit more mental toughness. It's not, that's maybe 3 or 4 times this season where they've had to be jolted into a better performance, and all's well that ends well. And it's a long season, and they've put in some shift. But you can't, I was as annoyed as anyone else that complacency against St Johnstone meant Saturday wasn't what Saturday could have been, and the league will be what it will be. We know that's coming, but it's just players can't always be, but I think should at certain times be thinking, what does this particular juncture mean to the fans, in terms of how this might play out next week and the week after, or whatever. And they just weren't, they were just whatever was in their heads should never have been, but they've turned it around, so we'll see what happens in the summer. But I still think there's going to be surgery, aye?
Yeah, I think we'll cover that and then some in the weeks ahead. But I think St Johnstone was so poor, but all you can do is respond to it. You can't dwell on it forever. At some point you need to say, okay, well, what are we doing about it? And I think what the players put in on Saturday was the perfect response. And as much as we'll talk about the positives, Tony Ralston getting his goal, and a couple of great goals actually by CCV and Rio Hatate, and Dyson just adding to his brilliant record this season, there have been changes. There was 4 changes to the starting lineup, and out go guys like Jeffrey Schlupp. We know he's here on loan. Forrest comes back in, obviously. Kuhn was dropped, and that is notable. Interesting enough that he kept the same midfield 3 though. It was almost like he was proving a point, as if to say these guys deserve a wee bit more trust.
I think partly that, but also partly, I would assume Bernardo's not as far along as we'd maybe have hoped, because the chat after the game from everybody was, I wish you'd seen Bernardo. Yep. McCowan, probably more damning on him than anyone else, because he would be the next cab off the rank, but wasn't entrusted with a starting slot. Maybe tells you where he is in the pecking order and what Rodgers' opinion is of him. Trusty, I thought was notable, but then I see that his wife's just had a baby, so I don't know what the timeline was around that.
Didn't get married last week.
Married last Saturday, had a wedding this weekend.
Busy
time at the Trusty house.
Good timing.
Yeah.
But for me, I expected Kuhn to be dropped. Yep. But Jota, probably another one, quite an interesting one.
I thought it was a wee bit harsh.
I was surprised at that. I think he's been working pretty hard since he came back, and he's got all the talent. He's probably more talent than most in the squad, but I don't think he's just been relying on that. I think he's been putting in a shift, and that's clear to see. What about Kuhn, just quickly, James? Yes, he was dropped, and he'll have been annoyed at the fact, but I thought when he came on, immediately he tried to make an impact and show that, or kind of prove to others that he's still up for the fight.
Yeah, I mean, within seconds, he was driving. What a talented laddie, he was hands down player of the season up until he decided to not be.
Player of the half season.
Player of the half season, and Dyson's obviously stole away with that. It's just disappointing, I suppose, and I do like to see the reaction, but you need to solidify that. You can't just be taking long dips, especially as a winger, because it's a confidence game, So you've just got to keep the momentum going. But I hope he does solidify and stay for another season. When the talk is there's strong offers for the summer, I'd like to see him one more season because he's got talent, but only one more season playing like he came off the bench on Saturday, not like he played against St Johnstone the week before.
I mean, Celtic hold all the cards. I think we signed him on a 5.5-year deal at the time, so no stress on that. I hope he gets his form back and then some. If you mentioned Paulo Bernardo, I was going to ask that very question. So he got 27 minutes off the bench a couple of weeks ago. On his return, he was on media duties that weekend, and that usually signals that a guy's back in the mix and all that. Then he's sub not used in Perth, and we talked about that last week, and they said, well, maybe the poor surface and they were protecting him from injuries and all that stuff. No such thing can apply to Saturday at perfect Celtic Park on the day. What do you think that is? Surely he was due minutes as part of his recovery. It would have just made sense to give him 10, 15.
You'd have thought so. But Brendan was in a bit of a stinker all week, so maybe just wasn't feeling very benevolent with his game minutes.
Can you blame the guy who didn't bring off the bench?
Well, it appears he has. And you, Bernardo, shave these sideburns. It's a Simpsons reference.
Right, got you. James, any thoughts on Paulo's non-appearance for 2 games in a row?
I suppose surprised and disappointed. I think he's a real talent. Now he is coming back from an injury, so there might be part of that. But to your long-standing point, if I'm putting you on the bench, you've got something. If you're not fully match fit, you think you are fully match fit if you're on the bench, but he's certainly able to play, fit to play.
That's a Tinoism. You're strong on that point, aren't you?
If you're on the bench, you're good to go. What if somebody gets injured in the first minute in your position? You've got to go.
You've got 120 minutes in penalties, haven't you?
Yeah. What about Liam Scales? So just to ask this question, when I was doing the pre-match on my own, lads, thanks, on Friday.
That's what the fans demand.
I think you just like doing that.
They just want more Tino.
You control the situation.
Anyway, we'll skip past that. But I was trying to predict the team for the weekend, and for the life of me, I just couldn't place who the left centre-half was going to be. Pretty sure CCV was going to remain, but was it going to be Nawrocki again, or Trusty, or Scales, or even Dane Murray? And I think the point of all of that is that at this moment in time, James, I just think Brendan Rodgers doesn't really know who his best bet there is, and now you're just back on the wheel. So now it's Liam Scales, next week it might be somebody else, and so on. What do you think? Scales have done all right, fine in that kind of game, but not really tested against Kilmarnock. Is he back as the next choice?
No, I think it's the middle of April, and if no one has claimed the jersey yet, then it's not their jersey and it won't ever be. There's plenty of time. They've all had chances to stake their claim. No, I think we need to go to the well in the summer for that, and if somebody wants to be the backup left centre-half and try and prove themselves over the next 6, 12, 18 months, fair enough, but no one is first choice.
Yeah.
No one.
I'd agree with that at the moment. I think the manager's realising that he's not got the guys he needs there.
My opinion, for what it's worth.
That's why you're here.
I believe it looks to my eye as I watch the games. I think Vickers is a bit more comfortable with Scales than is with Dales.
Somebody mentioned that. I think it was Gypsy King, friend of the show, that he thinks that is our best pairing because they seem comfortable with each other. And it's hard to argue with that. They've played a lot of games together. Trusty's obviously come in latterly. And
just purely, there's always that kind of wee unspoken thing where they just kind of know each other. It used to be the cliche you would say about, a front two. You don't really get that very often anymore in modern football, but they would know where each other is and one would drop, one would go along, all that type of thing. I think there seems to be that similar sort of telepathy between both of them. The connection between them both is a wee bit better, but again, that's just my theory on it.
We have spoken in previous shows about the importance of partnerships throughout the park, though. So whether it's your centre-half pairing, whether it was certainly first half of the season, Johnson and Kuhn were brilliant together. Then on the other side, you've got Taylor and Maeda for the start of the season. Jota's now there, Sloop's obviously there, so that's changed a bit. And then you've got your midfield three, whether that's usually Kalmak, Engels and Hatate. So there's these partnerships or kind of mini groupings throughout the game, and I think, guys naturally get used to playing with a certain player, and there's no doubt you'll prefer playing with one or the other, whoever that may be. So maybe that seems to be the best pairing for now, but that could all change next week. If had Yang been playing, would it have been double figures?
Possibly.
Probably.
But
in terms of the
season over?
Oh, a couple of weeks in a sling, I'll be back for the final. Don't worry about that. But there's no... First half was brilliant. As I say, the manager asked for a response. 24 minutes in, the game is dead and buried, absolutely. but there was a definite drop off in the second half, and I actually don't think Celtic done too much differently, but Kilmarnock just shut up shop, and they were delighted to get up the road at 5-1, weren't they?
It was the same as Hearts a couple of weeks ago. You know, it's 3-0 game was dead, and they just locked it up. They locked up the score. So, I mean, what can you really do? There was one point I was screaming at my telly when it went from Carter Vickers to Jamesy, maybe. It was out on the right. Wasn't he Jamesy? Can't remember who it was. Maybe Johnson. No, it was maybe Johnson. And they just passed it. It was like West Germany 1982. They were just like closing a game out, kind of thing. And he just passed it back and forth like 6, 7, 8, 9 times. And I was like, do something.
I think it was Carter Vickers and Engels. It was the second half.
Engels it was.
In the last 10 minutes, and they just bounce. And the game, I think it was 4-1 at that time. Yeah.
Shame on you.
I was in the right position.
But no, a really positive response, and actually just very encouraging. It shouldn't take a rocket or the manager to have to kind of reset things, but sometimes that's how it goes, and we speak often about the fact that these players aren't robots, and now and then just a reset is required, and it was great to see the response. We knew that if we won on Saturday, there was a chance we could win the title if Aberdeen won at Pittodrie, which they didn't. Question for you, Miff. Just how far have Rangers fallen that they celebrated that draw to go 15 points behind us like they had just won the Champions League? That was something, wasn't it?
Espanyolification manifest.
It's just a bit of a riot over there at the minute. I don't quite know what to make it. I say this fully aware of the fact that Rangers have come to Celtic Park and managed to beat us somehow, mainly through their own doing if you look back in that game, but still, credit to them. But I just can't take Barry Ferguson seriously. I just can't. And by the way, you could lead them to a European final. I say that. I say that with all, with all credit to what they've achieved in the Europa League. But I think it's just mental, just bizarre.
I seen some stuff on Twitter today, so they're going mad for wee Rascan, wee Nico. Oh, look at that, he's giving it large after we get the result, and it's like just drawn with Aberdeen. We're 15 points clear, and they're celebrating stuff like that, and your man scushing water and all that, and that's it. They will once again finish the season with 0 trophies. Do you know how many trophies Nico Rascan has won in his career?
His career is at 0?
Absolutely none. Right. And that's what they're celebrating.
But he gets it.
And it's and you might have seen Sutton talking to Chris Boyd, but it's pretty pathetic that that's what it's become. It's great.
Mean, even in the 90s, we weren't like that. You knew you did a poor season, and you kind of shut your mouth because you'd nothing to crow about. So I don't understand it and saying like, "Oh, it's your party." I don't think anyone did any real Sunday plans. When you win a league and your team's not playing, it just doesn't work out that way. You only really go for it if your team's playing, you're at it, or if there's the team coming back and stuff. I actually didn't have any plans for going down the green.
I had a wee bit of shopping to do, a bit of the golf, White Lotus, watching White Lotus. Busy times, Miff, and the Gers put the brakes on all that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Since the turn of the century, you might be very familiar with this stat, but there's been 25 titles to play for, including this one. How many have Celtic won? How many have Rangers won? Do you know the figure? 19.
This will be 19. Yeah.
6 for Rangers. It is beyond comparison, and it is, we talk about, and everyone talks about the Espanyolification. It's getting more and more and more like that as every season passes. We're about to sweep up, all going well, or at least on track to take all 3 trophies while they take none. Yet there seems to be, we've broken them. That result has broken.
I've not seen any. This is all news to me.
Twitter kind of stuff, I suppose.
I'll send you some links. Anyway, it's just been interesting to see the fallout, even just since that result at Pittodrie. The post-split fixtures were confirmed today, Monday afternoon, and they read as follows: Celtic away to Dundee United. Celtic away to Dundee United on Saturday, 26th of April. Away to Rangers, match day 2, Sunday, 4th of May. Home to Hibs, Saturday, 10th of May. Away to Aberdeen, Wednesday, 14th of May. And then Trophy Day, St Mirren at home on Saturday, the 17th of May. Miff, are you looking forward to receiving a Guard of Honour at Ibrox?
Yes, immensely. Although I think that was all put to bed when, was it not actually when Rangers won the league, the year Rangers won the league, and that was the only time the Guard of Honour thing ever came up and became an issue.
Did we all just agree?
And then after that, it was we don't talk about that anymore.
I want to give Jim Goodwin and the United Guard the honour and just let them roll us over and then go and pump them. At
It's very kind to give Jim an invite to the title party, because Jim would have been there regardless.
I say we chuck that one and win at Ibrox.
Well, there's a question. Hypothetically, Miff, do you roll over to Dundee United so you've got a chance to win at Ibrox?
No.
No.
Yes.
The thing is, you can't guarantee Rangers will beat St Mirren on their first post-split fixture. If I was being churlish, I would say accept defeat at United and go for it.
No.
But generally, Miff, 3 tough away fixtures in there: Tannadice, Ibrox and Pittodrie. What's your general thoughts on our last 5 games?
Well, that's what the split does. Had it been a bit more competitive, then you would be looking at it with a considerable amount of jeopardy, because it's tough. But
Twice in 2 weeks you've used the word jeopardy. It
Have I?
seems to be your thing.
yeah, don't know. We'll take a wee note here. We'll need to start watching my performances back. Get an analysis coaching. Listen, you need to play all the games. You need to go to all the grounds. We are well versed in doing that. Actually, looking at those fixtures, the one thing that stands out to me is you probably wanted Hibs at home.
Yeah.
If it was
Yeah,
going
on
into
form
like
Hibs.
running material.
4-0 for them at the weekend. They're flying. 19 games unbeaten, I think.
Apparently they were bottom of the league when it started.
They were bottom league in December, I
What-
think. November, December.
What a performance. I said, I think we both discussed this, I really felt for David Gray. He could not take that job, but they're a basket case of club and it was going to end badly for him. He shut me and everybody else up. And fair play to Hibs for sticking out as well.
Yeah,
True.
I think that's the thing, and I think it's only because it was him that they did.
Club legend.
legend,
But the boy, bringing back Boyle, adding guys like Dwight Gale,
Carden's good.
is Hoylett playing with him?
Justin Hoylett.
Junior Hoylett, did he go to them? And also the boy Bowie that they've brought in as well. Just they've made some really good signings. Really good signings. But listen, I mean, I look at those fixtures. I just think I'm quite glad we've managed it, because going away to Tannadice, away to Ibrox, away to Aberdeen would have been very, very tough. But like I said last week, chances are we won't even need to win another game, because Rangers have got to drop points anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's so close, James. It just means that either Celtic win 1 point or Rangers fail to win in each of their following games, and there's both are extremely possible, aren't they?
Absolutely. I mean, Aberdeen should be ashamed of themselves for that nonsense yesterday, like not being able to hold on to that. It was hitting hope stuff. The Rangers just throwing the kitchen sink at it and they couldn't stand up to it, which kind of exemplifies their season. They've shown they've got something, it's
been a mentality thing for Aberdeen this season, hasn't it? Because they proved in their first, a dozen games or so, that they could go toe to toe. They drew 2 each with us, and they thought they were good to go. And the reverse has happened completely in the second half of the campaign, with pretty much the same players and certainly the same manager, and it has to come down to mindset, doesn't it?
So they drew 2 each with us, was that at Parkhead?
Yeah.
And then we went and absolutely layered them 6-0, and that was the end of them.
Yep.
That was it. They just absolutely crashed for there. So kind of our fault. But I just thought it was poor. Bet365 are going to pull the 2 goals payout because they must be paying out all over the place for Rangers games.
Have they not gone two behind in something like 6 at the last 10 games? Is it something ridiculous?
My account says they have, yes.
Yeah. So it's an interesting one. Question for you, just in terms of the fixtures. I was having a wee bit of a rant about this in the post-match, but basically, I'll put it to you first, James. How ridiculous is it that the SPFL actively tie themselves in knots to ensure that the last Glasgow derby of the season isn't one that decides the fate of the title? It does not make any sense.
Right, so you can have Celtic Rangers in the cup final, everyone goes to the game, it's a showpiece, it's exciting, there's a lot at stake, and everyone goes up the road, just the way it is. We went to Hampden there in December. You and I had to walk to get to our friends through the Rangers bit, no bother, right? Kind of thing.
It's a good job you can scrap, mate.
It's behind you. But so there was no bother with that.
No.
So at Parkhead or at Ibrox, with limited away fans, even less chance of any bother.
Mm-hmm.
So I really think the Cops have got too much say in this. It should be up to the SPFL to market their product. And see as well, I'm at the SPL and their lack of marketing. See when a manager like the Japanese manager comes out and says his players can't be playing in Scotland if they want to get capped, someone has to come out and defend the product. Otherwise, you're just going to get trampled over. And the same reason, go and promote your product and put your 2 biggest teams in a showpiece final. Right, there's something at stake, and it's not going to be good for Rangers, but it's going to be good for us. But it could go the other way in years to come. Yeah. They've got to look towards entertainment.
If this is a thing, so I believe this type of ruling came in. So that the split happened, I think it came in 2001-ish. Is that right? Would that be right? Sure, I read something like that. Maybe it
But
is.
it was after Hugh Dallas and stuff.
So, well, that was it. So the Hugh Dallas game basically dictated that never again will a Celtic Rangers game be one that decides the league, which is crazy because Celtic and Rangers, whatever way you want to dress it up, and some Celtic fans will disagree, and whatever version of Rangers you want to speak about, are the two biggest clubs in the country, and it's the fixture many of us look forward to the most, and it's certainly Scottish football's biggest fixture for Celtic fans, for Rangers fans, and for the neutrals. It's our biggest asset. It's our biggest marketing tool, and we actively go out our way to make sure the game means nothing. And people talk about, there's been talk of league reconstruction recently, 16 teams, 14 teams, 12, 10, whatever. And the caveat is always, but Sky Sports need to have their 4 big Celtic Rangers games in that mix somewhere. Actually, it's only ever 3, because the 4th one doesn't matter and hasn't mattered for some time. So Sky are basically paying for 3 games in a dead rubber, which doesn't make sense either. And to your point, James, we've had 3 o'clock kickoffs at hand in the sunshine, 50-50 fan splits. And yes, there'll be some trouble around that fixture, there always is, but no more or less so than if this game was magnified in the game the way it should be. We should be propping this game up and making it almost the showpiece, the finale of the league campaign, yet we got our way to do the exact opposite.
Yeah, I think it's endemic of how we run our game, is that we seem to make it more convoluted than we have to. And I can say that from experience being in grassroots all the way through to what I see in the professional game as well. You know, for yourself, Tino, you're involved in the amateur game. I really can't answer that question, because I'm in the camp that believes we should have a showcase. We should always have a showcase. Anything you can do to elevate the game is a good thing. And you mentioned there about what the Japanese or any international manager might say about the quality of the league that they're playing in. One surefire way to go and promote the brand of the game worldwide would be to beam these games everywhere so people could see, and then they could see a Real Hatate or a Daisen Maeda and how well they're playing or not in a hostile environment. I think these things, we have to find a way. I really do believe that the great thing about Scottish football is Scottish football still has its soul. It's not completely sold out. There's still enough connection, I think, between players and fans, unlike in England, where it seems that gap is growing.
Poor product.
If you watch the City United derby last week, it was last weekend.
Yep.
You literally would, honestly, just a waste of time watching the game, and the build up lures you in, makes you want to watch the games that are on Sky for the Premier League. Then sometimes you watch them and it's a bit of a non-event. You go back, I even watched the other night there, I watched the Aaron Falkirk game. Can't game to watch. There's stuff happening.
There's been loads
there's stuff
all
happening
through Scottish football this season.
So we've got something there where if you watch it, the atmospheres are decent, the crowds are decent, even relatively sparsely supported clubs, the likes of St Johnstone and Livingston have got their wee ultra groups of fans who are creating atmosphere at the games, even if there is only maybe 2,000-3,000 at them. Everybody that loves the game is trying, but the people that run it aren't. And I just think that's completely unacceptable.
Do you think we lack inspiration under Neil Doncaster, James? He has paid a lot of money to not do nothing, but to say nothing, to not promote, to not stand up for the game, to not be proactive about pushing all these good narratives and all these good stories. And he is the main man, he's a figurehead. Do we lack someone with a bit of charisma or a bit of drive in that position?
I'll be generous and say every organisation needs freshened up from time to time, and he's been doing that job for 15 years, something like that, more?
Long time.
And there's was it Barry Hearn came up and said, I know how to fix this, I can do this in 10 minutes, and showed them all, and they were going to lose control, and they just went, we'll get back to you, and never did. So there's a way to, and you need to be careful with that, I suppose, as well, Miff, that you don't lose that, because what we've got is soul and connection between the players, the clubs and the fans, and you don't want to lose that. But you do want these clubs to grow. If you look at Hibs and Aberdeen, huge clubs that aren't getting full attendances out with maybe playing us and Rangers, and they should be, and if you start to promote the game more, bring more money into the game, they can sign better players, they can develop their academy, all these things. So 100%. I don't think there's anyone that watches football has any time for SPFL or SFA. So fresh thinking, commercial thinking about selling the product, making the product as good as it can be, putting some standards in place. We speak about it a lot, in terms of the condition of the grounds, both in terms of the facilities and the park that the players play on. There's all sorts you go through. Time wasting, maximising crowds. There's no drive to improve the product. So 100% you need new people.
I'd say so. And talk of league reconstruction will rumble on, and we'll just need to see where we get to. We'll focus on it as we start to kind of head out towards the other side of the season, but there's just so much going on just now, and it'll always come up when things like the fixtures are released. So we'll see how that goes. Just the last thing on it, so obviously we've got the chance to lift the title at Tannadice. It'll invoke good memories for a lot of folk. Title for Tommy in 2008. Were you there, Muff?
Wasn't there, was at a wedding, and then was on it for 3 days after.
Okay, great wedding.
No, because of the wedding. I left the wedding.
Not your wedding, no.
Relatively quick. No, not my own. That was a night and a half. That.
Yeah, and we've also got Ange's first league title, won that at Tannadice, and lots of good memories there. So James, are you looking forward to a similarly good atmosphere? Obviously, it's a shame that we can't do it at home, or it's not looking that way, but it should be a good atmosphere at Tannadice. It's a good atmosphere ground, and it's a good a place as any, I guess, if you've got to win away.
Probably my favourite away ground. Yeah, they're Pittodrie, I suppose, but Pittodrie's tough these days, getting stuck in that wee box in the corner. Proper football team. I think we said that earlier in the season. Proper football team. Delighted for Jim Goodwin, what he's done with them, and hopefully they can consolidate on that and drive on again next year. But yeah, it's set up nice. Saturday morning, rest of the day yourselves. Go and enjoy.
Yeah, lots to look forward to. So a couple of weeks to wait, potentially, for the next title. Before we kick on, I just want to address our March winner and our big giveaway in the Celtic Exchange Plus. You might see, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm holding up the Celtic jersey, which is the stunning book by Paul John Dykes, charting the history of the hoops from whenever right to now. Thanks again for that gift, James, back in the day. Paul John has kindly gifted a signed copy to the winner of this month's prize draw, and we'd done the prize draw before the show recorded, and we've got a recording of it in case anyone wants to check the veracity of it. But Miff, who was the winner in this month's draw?
It was David Devine.
David Devine. So well done to David Devine. Thanks to him for his ongoing support, and we'll get that arranged for him moving forward. In April, we're giving away a unique framed print featuring Celtic's record goal scorer Jimmy McGrory. You can see it on the wall behind me if you're watching on YouTube. We've also been posting it on our socials in recent times if you want to have a look. A genuine Celtic legend, and it's a stunning piece of artwork. To make sure you're in the draw, all you need to do is sign up for any level of Celtic Exchange Plus this month at the celticexchange.supercast.com. There is a link in the show notes. And being a Celtic Exchange Plus member allows you to enjoy uninterrupted, ad-free access to every show we do. You also get early access to this Celtic Exchange Weekly show every Monday before everyone else gets it on a Tuesday. And you get the chance to win unique Celtic prizes like the ones we've just mentioned, all while supporting independent fan media and helping us build the Celtic Exchange podcast. So that's the celticexchange.supercast.com, or just click the link in the show notes. And well done again to David Devine, who's the winner of the Celtic jersey book for March. James, as we kick on, there's a couple of interesting listeners' questions that have come in, so I want to just go through them with you guys at the moment. First one is from Chris, who's part of our WhatsApp group. There's also a link to join that in the show notes if you want to get involved in the chat. And Chris says, if you had the opportunity to put one straight question to Brendan Rodgers and get one straight answer about anything at all Celtic related, past or present, what would it be?
Is Chris suggesting that Brendan doesn't give straight answers? Because I've asked him a couple of questions, always get a straight answer.
Yeah, so obviously you and I have both attended press conferences, and you fall into whatever's going on at the time, performances or players' form and upcoming fixtures and European stuff. So you end up getting caught up in, not the mainstream media need to ask certain questions. I know they get a hard time, but they need to ask, who's injured?
Yep.
How's this been? How's that been? And sometimes, I actually think most of the time, the various fan media outlets that attend the press conferences can and are quite creative with their questions.
More imaginative, yeah.
But this allows you scope to go even further, James.
Right.
Ask them whatever you want.
Serious answer and a fun answer.
Yes.
A serious question I would ask him is, within Celtic, if you were given a magic wand, unlimited budget, what structural changes would you make within Celtic? Stay with me, Miff.
The man loves some structural change.
Is it starting to move the way he wants it? Are we on a path to fixing past messes? Or is there still blockage at Celtic in terms of what he wants to do?
Yeah. And you talk about a magic wand, and if money wasn't an object, money shouldn't be an object. The money is there for Celtic.
And for a lot of that stuff, it's 7 figures, and we've got 8 figures in the bank, maybe sometimes 9. The
hope is that Brendan Rodgers and the board are on the same page. I think they are fairly well aligned, and he says he's been speaking to Dermot Desmond about what the future might hold, and there's ongoing debates whether he just sees out year 3 of his contract and then moves on, or does he extend it, or does he even leave earlier? But he's assured fans this weekend he's going nowhere.
He gave himself a vote of confidence.
Yeah.
150%.
Correct. But that's an interesting one, James. So yeah, if there was no barriers anywhere, what would you change? Is that the bottom line?
Are things changing the way you want them to change, or is there more to come?
Okay.
Because we didn't perform as a transfer policy in January there.
Yeah, that's true.
I
I have a couple of suggestions, just thinking from my own point of view. You'd ask him what really went on between him and Moussa Dembele. Some bad blood there. You'll have seen the tweets at the time.
We're off to China.
If he could turn back the clock to February 2019, would he still leave? I say yes. Money talks. 8 million versus 2 million, I believe, is the figure at the time. And on a more serious note, who's his preferred choice as Celtic captain? Was it Bruni for everything he done, or is it Callum McGregor? If he could only pick one of them,
Ian Tierney.
Who would he go with? But anything else, Smith? Anything that jumps out to you?
What has Mike Nawrocki done to hurt you so much? Would be one. Another would be who's the best striker he's had, because I think that's a really interesting debate. I'd seen that. My oldest boy sent me a TikTok. It was best since Larson countdown, and it was 5. It was Hooper, into Griffiths, into
Musa,
into Dembele, into Eddie, and I was like, who's number 1 got to be? And it was Ajay. I was like, yeah, beep. But when I seen, when you think of the likes of Griffiths, and it's easy because of the way things transpired with him, but talking about the player and the produce on the pitch, Dembele, who was just a touch of class, but then we just got a version of Eddie which has never been seen since. For that 18 months, he was as good as I've seen him. I thought he was absolutely phenomenal. And then you've got Kyogo.
Yeah.
You've got more recently, who was absolutely phenomenal for us. Excellent goal return. So I'd probably ask him that, but I know his answer would definitely not be Kyogo.
No. What would your answer be? You've given all your rationale.
Kyogo.
Kyogo better than Edward, better than Dembele.
Yep.
Musa.
Yeah, I lean towards Dembele as well. Big fan, but
as was I. Love Musa, but I'd say Kyogo. Most impactful.
You've spent a lot of time berating, is that the word, Brendan Rodgers since February 2019. So as I say, you can ask him absolutely anything. Is there anything more you'd like to find out, to know?
How quickly did you clear out your flat when you moved? Was it a midnight flat?
Ready to go.
Yeah. Was it a midnight flat?
It was midnight flat.
No, because do you know what? As much as it still annoys me, it's done.
Yeah,
you can't do anything to change it. I'd probably focus more on the future, because we're at a really critical point. The squad does need more surgery than we thought. Is Brendan going to be the man? If you're entrusting him with a budget in the summer, what's the point in that if the year after he's off ski? So I think there's big questions to be asked around that. Is what are his intentions over the next 18 months?
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's a good question from Chris, and obviously kind of brings up a variety of things. And as you say, you can have the serious answers and the fun answers and whatever else. We'll put it out on the socials, and we'll see what the listeners are saying to that over the next few days. Second question, it comes from Antonio, also in the WhatsApp group, and he says, based on the change in form that we've seen since the turn of the year, do we think something has changed tactically, or are there other factors at play for the loss of form? Do we think there's a danger that under Brendan Rodgers the players have been overcoached to an extent? And I think we've seen this topic come up in recent times, that players are very robotic. It's a very Pep Guardiola thing. Players are just, they play to such a system that creativity and flair are almost banned. It feels like that. Do you think there's a danger Celtic are going that way?
I think the reason's actually a bit more nuanced than that, in that when players come into a stage in a very, very expansive, extensive, tiring season with all the challenges they've come through, and come through well, when you do have a very, very technical, highly prescribed kind of way of playing football from the manager, and you don't have the mental energy to be creative, you snap back to just doing what you're being told. So you're not inventive, you're not imaginative, you're not creating anything within the structure. And I think as much as Rodgers puts a strict structure in place, he wants players to be creative within that. And if the players are just exhausted, they're not doing that. Go on, John.
I don't necessarily think there's a huge difference between the Ange and Rodgers style because of the way teams set up against us. I think you see pretty much the same sort of fare at home specifically, as you did under both coaches. There may be times though that maybe under Ange we moved a wee bit quicker in certain situations, or players felt a bit more liberated to do their own thing. But I genuinely think it's just a lack of challenge. That is that simple.
Yeah, that's it. You don't think anything's changed tactically, structurally, anything? You know,
not to my eyes, no.
Do you think, and I think I've got my own answer on this, as a player, you're going to be far more motivated and excited when you know there's European stuff coming up, particularly Bayern Munich, you know, European giants, Bayern Munich in the Allianz Arena. And it's just natural that when that is gone for the season, you've had the high and the euphoria of almost taking it extra time, and then you have to go and head to Perth and play St Johnstone and some other games like that. Yeah, I think I'm as opposed to anything tactically or structurally, that as much as anything is the reason for the dip for me.
I think it's a lot to do with that. It's just when I say complacency, it's encompassing all those things, the lack of challenge and the mindset after that. And I know you can argue, well, it shouldn't be the case, and I agree. I completely agree. And certainly the way I've been shouting at my telly during some of the games, you would say that in the away games, St Johnstone and Ibrox. But by the same token, that, you know, even wee things, all small things can add up. New players are coming into the squad in January, and even somebody that's been an integral part of the squad like Taylor, who looks like he's leaving, he'll have friendships and that great. Just all those things sort of add up, and I just think we have probably approached it like the season's been done before the season's really done. But I also think the board play a huge part in that for the reasons James is went on about around lack of proper reinforcements. You know, so if you add into that somebody who's been an integral part of the squad has left in January in Kyogo, looks like Taylor's going to leave as well, who's been an integral part of what we've done, whether you like him or not, you need to accept that. Those things, the players are human, those things come into play. Also the dejection after Munich, after being so close, it's a huge thing. Yeah, I just think there's many different factors, but you look at that first 20-25 minutes in Saturday, and you know it shouldn't take the amount of prodding that the team have had, but they've clearly been prodded and then some, both by fans and by their own manager. And look at the result that's happened when they've actually been pressed right back up against the wall. They've come out absolutely firing. So, yeah, the human mind is a funny thing, and that encompassed within football makes it even more strange. You know, strange things happen in football, but I think what we do have is we still have that core of excellent players with a winning mentality, but we probably need a few more than we thought if we really want to kick on beyond the level where we are just now.
And the manager has spoken about a freshness is required. That was his kind of main theme on Friday's press conference, that, again, it's human nature stuff. It's not rocket science or convoluted or smoke and mirrors. It's just, you know, stuff that we all know about in terms of life. You need this freshness because this group does feel like it's heading somewhere towards the end of its natural cycle, you know, after so many players in the group are part of the Ange season one, you know, stuff that was going on. And new players bring new energy, and they also keep guys on their toes. And if you know there's a guy coming in for your position, and so on and so forth. And I think that freshness is definitely required, but you can't do anything about that till summer. So you're with the group you're with, and maybe some of that staleness that you mentioned is kicked in. James, just to finish on this question, I was going to ask about, you know, would you like to see Celtic players at times given more autonomy and freedom, you know, particularly in the final third, certainly, to go and express himself more? You know, it does seem quite rigid at times. But actually, is that the difference between an Ange side and a Brendan Rodgers side? Ange will let you take off the shackles and play with as much freedom as you want, and at times it'll cost you at the back, whereas Brendan Rodgers looks for far more control. So Miff's right. In many ways, the styles are similar, but I think that's the big difference. What do you think?
I don't know if Ange was like actively encouraging that when it was dangerous to go up. You know, I don't think he was advocating that. I think it is pretty similar in terms of styles, but he did have a bit more cavalier, shall we say. But you absolutely had to score it because, you know, you're 3 against 1 at the back if you miss it. But I do think there is creativity and space to express yourself within Rodgers' style too. I just think there's like a lack of freshness in terms of the mentality of the players, that they're tired from it all. One thing I would say is, as much work as we need to do in the summer, we do have a foundation that we can build on. You know, the players showed us, with as far as they took Bayern Munich, this is a team that collectively have matured and grown together and understood how to attack these challenges. You don't want to, just throw that out with the bathwater and replace 7 or 8 players. We're probably looking about 3 or 4 core players and then maybe another 2 or 3 players that are going to come in as second choice and push the first choice would be my preference, because there's real foundation there. And I think Rodgers will go at the end of next season, and he is going to really want to do his work in Europe next year.
Yeah, do you know, he's quote unquote 150% going to be here next year. He's not here to be an also-ran or to fail in Europe and to not win the league again, if not another treble. That is absolutely his targets, and he'll always speak about the short term. And right now, the focus will only be on St Johnstone in that semi-final on Sunday. But there's no doubt Brendan Rodgers will be planning ahead, and he wants to leave a legacy. This is why he returned, and he wants to walk out the door whenever it might be. It might be the end of next season, it might be even further down the track, but he wants to leave having won everything he can and having progressed the club in Europe, and that's got to be his target, Smith. You can see that's the way he operates.
Yeah, and listen, it was, as much as I give him stick for leaving, it was that lack of ambition that ultimately led him to leave. Would he have left if he'd been given some assurances around what the plan was next? Maybe not. But that is, when we brought Rodgers back, that is what we knew we were getting, is we were getting an ambitious and a driven coach that would need some form of backing. Now, he didn't get it immediately, much to all of our consternation at the time, but it has developed over time, and a lot of the signings that he's brought in have worked out to be very good. But the most important point is now, and what we're about to face, and he himself, along with others in the squad, have questions to answer. For some in the squad, it's justification of their place there. But for him, it's between him and the club to work out how we move forward from here around who's going to take responsibility for this next stage in the building of the squad. Because what's the point in bringing in new players for that coach if he's then not going to be there to see it through? Yeah, you do see that at times. The Kyogo thing's still a strange one, and I've seen some quotes at the weekend that so Kyogo signed and the Rennes manager walked 3 days later, and by all accounts it was because there was some big hitter at the club. I think he's quite a well-known character out there. He was signing the players, and the coach says, well, I can't work with that. It's got to be aligned. It's got to be the players that suit the present manager and his style, and I think Celtic seem to be on the right page, or the same page, in terms of Rodgers on the board. But him and Paul Tisdale have got a big summer coming up. This is Paul Tisdale's first real test. He's been in the job long enough now, and it's going to be really interesting to see how well or not the manager is supported in the summer.
It's about time we heard from Paul Tisdale and Michael Nicholson. Tell us where we're going.
Yeah.
Perry's.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind hearing that.
Finger out, lads.
The last thing is, to your earlier point, there's no huge rebuild required here. The infrastructure's in place. There's a core of a really good and talented an experienced group now. They've come through some European challenges together. If we can make some key additions in key positions, we should be in a pretty good place. Last question, I'll squeeze it in. A few folk have got in touch today regarding Greg Taylor's position. So Greg Taylor was right out the picture, comes on in the second half against St Johnstone, does pretty well, picks up man of the match at the weekend. I thought Rio probably was man of the match, but Greg Taylor got it in the stadium. Nice touch, he brought the wee one out, the newborn baby at the start of the game, really nice to see. And people love him again. People are back on the Greg Taylor wagon, and I know you've always been on it, Miff. So a few folk have got in touch. Ian O'Sullivan, Ian's a mate over in Cork, good friend of the show, and he's basically saying, should we just give him the 25k? There's been a lot of toing and froing, but he's proved that he can play the position that the manager wants him. He played the inverted fullback very well at the weekend, Miff, and I thought it made a difference. Other folks have asked Sparta Cragg, that we know from Blue Sky, he was saying that should you give 32-year-old Jeffrey Schlupp 30 odd grand, or 27-year-old Greg Taylor, should you give him the 20 to 25 grand that he's looking for? If you're tossing coins over that, where do you stand? I'll come to you first, James, because I kind of know your answer anyway, Miff, but where do you stand, James, on Greg Taylor?
The problem, because football's watched for your eyes, Miff, is when Taylor is playing the inverted fullback role that fans really love to see, and he plays it so well, it's because he's not playing at left back, he's playing in midfield, and he is excellent at it. and it gives us an overload in the midfield, so it looks like we're doing a lot more than we actually are. We're just 2-on-1 to a guy. But when the chips are down and we're under the cosh, to mix my metaphors, and he's a left back in Europe away, it's just not a position he's comfy in. I don't know who coached him into being a left back ever, because he can show he's got more talent and skill on the ball to play a midfield role rather than playing a fullback. I just don't think it suits him. I know he's 27, so he's probably not going to change now. But the Greg Taylor we love isn't the Greg Taylor at left back away in Europe when we're under the cosh.
The Greg Taylor against Kilmarnock at home is absolutely fit for purpose, and he's very good at it. And actually, he's more than capable for just about every domestic challenge we face. But that's such a different task when you're away to Bayern Munich or any other team at that Champions League level, Miff. And that's where it kind of comes unstuck for me.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's one thing wanting a left back to come in at its Champions League standard, but it's another thing to have somebody who's going to be able to bolster the squad, potentially in different positions, not just one. I see it as complete business sense to keep him as support to Tierney, but my understanding is it's the fact that Tierney's coming back is the reason why Taylor's wanting to go.
He won't be first choice.
He wants to play.
Because he's wanting to play. There's been a whole swathe of rumour that he's going to Rangers.
Nonsense.
I've seen bits of that.
I mean, first things first, don't listen to Ali McCoist.
No. It wasn't actual McCoy. It was just various different kind of Twitter accounts and stuff like that. But I would imagine that he would be able to play at a decent level in England, as in, I think he'd play in the Premier League. I don't think there'd be any issues with that.
Premier League?
I think he'd play in the Premier League. Don't think it would be Championship. I think he's got a lot of experience.
I think he'd be squad in the Premier League. I think he'd be first choice mid to top Championship.
So it'll be really interesting to see where he goes next. For me personally, I would keep him, but I'm biased. I like him. A lot of people don't, but I think he's a huge character in the squad. And I'm a fan. I am a fan of his. What will be interesting though is what we do next, and it's an interesting point around Schlupp and any wages he would potentially command. When I don't think it will be either Taylor or Schlupp that stay. I think it will be somebody completely fresh.
You might be right there.
And that in itself just creates further intrigue as to who we're going to bring in and potentially look at maybe somebody younger. It's maybe a bit more of a project that would come in and learn under Tierney.
Matthew Anderson.
That's the name that keeps coming up.
If the performance against St Johnstone and Rodgers has given Schlupp both barrels that he deserved, and he's got back an attitude of don't care, and this is absolute supposition on my part, if he's checked out for some Saudi money.
You know the deal, if you don't know for sure, just make something
just say
up.
It's, as long as it goes out on the internet, that's the main thing.
Yeah, so
because then it becomes real and believable. But if he's got an idea, a plan towards Saudi, and he's just went, I don't need any nonsense here, I'm going to get a league winners medal, probably get a wee cup medal as well, off to Mado in the summer. He's certainly done something that Rodgers dropped him for Taylor, who Rodgers knows is leaving in the summer.
He was just poor against St Johnstone first half, as were many others.
He can't have responded enough to get his place back.
But what I will say is, if that was the case, he probably wouldn't have come on.
Yeah, he's not been kiboshed. He's not been
at the weekend.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
I dispute your made up fact.
Your fact is also made up.
The last thing I'd like to say is Brendan Rodgers was speaking, and he's quoted in the last couple of weeks about Greg Taylor, and he said, quote unquote, it's not financial. And that leads me to believe it's the whole thing about he can't guarantee him, as in Brendan Rodgers cannot guarantee Greg Taylor first choice left back. You just cannot when Kieran Tierney's coming back in the building. So I think that's where it's come unstuck. I think that's where both parties have had to agree to disagree. Greg Taylor feels that he's due a start. Manager will be saying, listen, you're going to be a supporting role, and that's where the disconnect is. That's what he's saying. It's not financial. So I'm sure Celtic will have put a decent package to him. Brendan Rodgers has said several times, I want him to stay. He's an important part of what we do. He's a really popular guy in the dressing room. You might have seen quotes in the last few days actually from James Forrest, waxing lyrical, saying he's a great teammate. We all want him to stay, but we understand he's got a choice to make, things of that nature. But I think it's just the fact that Kieran Tierney's coming in and something's got to give, and that leads to a partner of company.
But surely he must know if Tierney's coming in, he's going to play a lot of football.
I'm not buying this myth either that Kieran Tierney can't play a full season for Celtic. I think he's looking fit as a fiddle. Have you seen some of his stuff in recent weeks? The boy is fresh and good to go.
It's not his, I mean, he must train like a beast. It's not his fitness levels, it's his body's ability to take the endurance of game after game, the knocks. So I think, and it's not even that Tierney's body couldn't handle it, it's like you as a coach and a coaching team shouldn't be putting his body in the way of that if you can avoid it. If you can play Greg Taylor against Kilmarnock, against St Johnstone, and you can bring Tierney in, one game in 3 and then in Europe and in the Rangers and stuff like that, I think you've got a more balanced squad. But with that, Taylor should be thinking, I'm going to play a lot of football there.
But you can imagine how that conversation goes. Right, Greg, here's the story. So next season, we've got Kieran coming in. So he's going to play the big games and I'm going to throw you into St Johnstone. Is that cool? Not cool. So if Kieran Tierney's getting told he's getting the 8, 9, 10 Champions League games, if we make it there.
So it's not the football that he would get to play, as in the number of games, it's the games he would get.
It's the level. You're getting told you're second best, and nobody likes to hear that. Whatever your job is, Miff, you've heard that a few times, I'm sure. You don't want to hear that there's...
No.
You don't want to hear that you're...
in here.
You're third best in here right now. We'll move on, but thanks to the various questions, the guys for the various questions, to Chris in the WhatsApp group, to Antonio, to Ian, and to Sparta Crag, Miff's favourite.
Slavia Crag.
The last thing to cover just before we finish out is a glance towards that semi-final against St Johnstone. Obviously, they beat us 1-0 just a week and a bit ago, James. Totally different scenario. Hampden Park, a place where Brendan Rodgers just does not lose for Celtic. What are you expecting from that one on Easter Sunday?
Something similar to what Aberdeen got, And to be fair, like, St Johnstone's focus shouldn't be on that game. They've picked up 3 really strong points against us, but their focus has to be...
What did they do at the weekend? Did they win?
Dundee United beat them 1-0, I think.
Right.
Yeah. So they've got to see who they can scrap for points for with teams around them. So they might not even have a full squad out. Who knows? I mean, you can't gamble on cup glory and get relegated. You've got to try, unless you've given up and you're getting relegated.
It's
then
bizarre, isn't it? The example,
I think it might be the latter.
Yeah, maybe.
What, they'd gamble on cup glory?
Because they're down already.
I think they're down.
Yeah, they are pretty hemmed away.
I think of that example in recent times where, was it Sean Maloney's Wigan won the FA Cup? Was it Ben Watson scored the winner? And they get relegated the next week. So they've had the high of the cup and then the real blow of going out the top league. And Simo Vallecari, it's a tricky one. So they're around about 5 or 6 points adrift at the moment. And if you think you're done, those games are running out, 5 games to go. But there is a chance to etch yourself into club history.
I know.
But also with the split makes them all 6 pointers as well.
Yeah.
So you're not just winning, you're bringing somebody else into it as well.
Hearts aren't in the clear. They can get drawn right back into that.
Yeah, every team's in this kind of dogfight down at the bottom, and it's such a bizarre headspace. It's not often St Johnstone make the Final Four. They won the Scottish Cup semi-recent times.
2014.
Was that the one at Celtic Park?
And then, St Johnstone won the double in the COVID.
Of course they did.
Jeez, double cups.
They're fed up winning that Scottish Cup. Just focus on the league, lads.
Imagine the third best podcast in the room coming out of that. All that trivia and stats.
You got me there, bro. Matt, but what are you expecting from Celtic come Sunday afternoon?
I'm expecting a reaction to the league game. Yes, most certainly. Hopefully as emphatic as the Aberdeen game, but I would expect to see an energetic and dynamic performance.
Do you think we're going to see a similar scoreline to Aberdeen?
Not necessarily, because St Johnstone have shown that they can defend well and doggedly against us, but you go back and watch the last 20 minutes of that game at St Johnstone. How Celtic haven't scored 4 or 5 goals is bizarre. I mean, we
was inspired.
We have created some very, very good chances. Even Rio's shot,
the post.
Then Rio's
balloon over the back.
Oh, jeez, what's he doing? And the save for McCown, which I thought was excellent. McCown's taking the ball down brilliantly, and keepers get right out on top of him.
Yep.
Some really nice play for Celtic, but also some brilliant defending for St Johnstone. So we go into that game, all of a sudden there's players playing for their places again as well. Changes have been made, maybe a wee bit of freshness in there, and then we've got the rampaging scoring fullback Tony Ralston contending for a place as well. So no, I'm really looking forward to it. Have you downloaded your Hampden app for your tickets?
Done it today. Oh, it's good to go. No problem.
Aye. A lot of noise.
Yeah.
What
I'm referring to, for anyone tuning in, is that it's gone all digital for this semi-final for the first time. I think it's causing chaos for supporters' buses because as opposed to getting paper tickets, which can then be distributed, the ticket needs to be assigned to a certain email and all that stuff. So straightforward for us, just our tickets together, all fine. But I can imagine the problems, but we'll need to see. All okay for you?
Well, no. Both me and Maldus Boy pulled, but I'll only seem to have one ticket through so far, so I'll just need to wait and see what's happened on that.
Good luck with that.
Aye, thanks.
Just the last thing,
the Beechwood.
you talk about the motivators for a game like that. St Johnstone absolutely have to have one eye on the league stuff. There's no doubt about that. Whereas Celtic can really go for broke. You know, we know what's required league stuff. 1 point and we're good to go, and hopefully that's at Tannadice, if not all three on the day. But there's the motivator to get to another cup final. It's the showpiece game of the season, and the players that play for Celtic, whatever the lineup is on Sunday, as well as those who come in off the bench, they'll be seriously motivated, James, to make sure that they get a start in the cup final if we're fortunate enough to be there.
Yeah, because it's a treble. You're on for a treble here. There might be players that are playing for Celtic right now that will never have another opportunity if they leave Celtic to win a treble, because trebles are really hard to come by. So to be able to say you're part of a squad that went and clean sweep of the Scottish Honours, it's a great motivator. But I also think there's a wee bit of players not playing for their careers, anything like that, but playing to show the manager they deserve to be first team for Celtic next season and part of that foundational group that's done so well so far. But there's some who've let themselves down, and it's just a great opportunity for that. And the result of that is we should get a fully motivated squad, a fully energetic game that we go out like the first 24 minutes on Saturday.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think there's no doubt there's been a couple of bumps in the road in recent weeks. We've spoken about that. We're on where it was 3 league defeats in 6 games, but there's no bigger motivator than going and writing your own name into Celtic history. I think we're going to get a big performance on Sunday. I think it's at least 4-0 to Celtic, if not more. But we'll do a big preview on Friday, as always. Just last bit of news, you might have seen that Louis Palma is now a league winner.
Good on him.
He won the, I don't know, what do you call it, the Greek Serie A, the Greek League or something. He's won the top title in Greece with Olympiacos. And I don't know what the future is for Louis Palma, whether he stays in Europe or does he come back and fight for a Celtic jersey?
No.
I think he's just got to keep moving to different leagues so they don't realise that he just steps inside and lashes.
Yeah, so
No,
just keep it fresh.
He's a talented lad, but I just don't think it worked for him with us. Hopefully that'll lead to a bid coming in for him and we can use those funds elsewhere.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. As much, I was quite excited about him when he came in at first.
Likeable guy, talented guy.
Scored that big goal against Atletico Madrid and just did not kick on. But
on.
now, good luck to him. I mean, all you can
Absolutely.
do when you go on these loan spells is impress with the club you're at. Lagerbielke's doing the same. I think he's found his feet at FC Twente and he's back in the international fold. And good luck to those guys. And whether they end up back at Celtic or not remains to be seen. But all they can do is play well while they're away. And good to see that for Louis Palma. James, your final comments for the week.
It's been a long and busy old season, isn't it? So just into the
50 games as of Saturday.
Is that right? So, don't know if Kieran Tino can do 50 games, can he?
No bother.
54, 55, 57. But yeah, it's been a great season so far, and we're now in a position where we can just really go and finish strong. I would just say that a minute ago, but trebles are so rare, and what that would be our ninth
in 136 years of Celtic.
Aye. So great opportunity, and fair play to the players and manager for just pulling through. We've been a wee bit moany the last few weeks, and rightly so, but they showed on Saturday, first half an hour, that they got the message and let's drive on.
I think so. Miff, final word goes to you.
Yeah, well, I'd hoped that the St Johnstone defeat would mean a kind of line was drawn under what had went before. There was a wee bit of maybe complacency within the squad, attitudes needing rectified, and I think in complete fairness to the manager, I think the tone that he set from the start of the week right through to the game showed that he, if no one else, truly was meaning business around sorting out any lingering problems in the squad around how they should be approaching games. And I think what you saw the first 20-25 minutes on Saturday was the perfect response for the players to that. So we can argue all day the merits in needing to be at that point and why we were at that point, but what matters is now and what's coming next and what sort of mindset the players are in now. And I don't think there's any doubt that the focus has now been adjusted and that the players' minds will 100% be on the job. It's created competition in the squad that maybe we didn't think was there. Somebody like James Forrest coming back in and doing really, really well. So I'm really intrigued, really looking forward to the game. Let's hope that the ticket lands in the wee app that I've got, the extra ticket. Otherwise, I will see you in the beach with.
Here's hoping with that all gets sorted. And yeah, great to see the response from Celtic at the weekend, and hopefully we can take that into Sunday's Scottish Cup semi. That wraps things up on this latest episode of the Celtic Exchange Weekly. Thanks to James and Muff, and thanks to you for listening. We'll be back later this week with a full St Johnstone match preview on Friday, and we might TBC have a new CSC story for you on Wednesday, but we'll let you know. And if you want to enjoy uninterrupted ad-free listening, early access to the Celtic Exchange Weekly, and to support what we do here at the Celtic Exchange, then jump to the celticexchange.supercast.com or just click the link in the show notes to check out the Celtic Exchange Plus. But in the meantime, have a brilliant week. We'll see you all again really soon.